So, a few years ago, some people gathered around the communal carbon expelling combustion reaction and lied to each other. And then their kids started telling roughly the same lies to each other, but changing some details either because they forgot or just thought they could do it better. This kept going on until some nerd adapted all these lies into a book called The Odyssey, and it was a bit popular. After that, it was adapted into 1.2 billion languages and further adapted into new mediums, stage plays, radio dramas, everything. They weren't just informed by the Odyssey. They were often based on a shared, adapted understanding of the Greek gods and heroes formed from a patchwork of dozens of myths. In the 2000s, they decided to adapt it into a popular musical. I'm sure you all know what I'm talking about. Oh brother, where art thou? And then this guy did his own version, and it was pretty good. It was so pretty good that a bunch of artists decided to adapt it into animation. So, filtered through the lens of 3,000 years of cultural understanding, using the same story as a baseline and limited to the same music, narrative, and vocal performance, how different could these adaptations really be?
I've got people to protect, friends I can't neglect, so now there is no turning back. You've made your one wrong move, now you're done for. I will be the one to prove that you're done for. Not even a spell saves you, cause you're done for. Oh, you better run, or soon you will be done for.
Okay, so there's some stuff to talk about, I guess. Adaptation is a big subject, from Lord of the Rings to live-action remakes, but I can't imagine a better framework than Epic by Jorge Rivera Arons. He turns the Odyssey into a more cohesive narrative, cuts some stuff out, and generally adds to the characters and story in very understandable ways. It's also edgy. The Odyssey is about a man who overcomes all odds to get back to his family. Epic is about a man so twisted by his experiences you couldn't even say the person who left made it back. In the Odyssey, Zeus strikes the ship with lightning and only Odysseus survives. In Epic, Zeus makes Odysseus choose between sacrificing himself or his crew. This is a powerful character choice and a defining moment for Odysseus, created through adaptation. In the Trojan War, we know that Hector's child is killed, and it was Epic's choice to have the killer be Odysseus. But it's not just character moments we're adding. Something small, like the Lotus Eaters leading Odysseus to the Cyclops, adds a cause and effect connection where before they were two separate events. Despite how much I love the Odyssey and how it's so legendary, it's hard to call most of these anything other than improvements. The asterisk would be that the changes to Odysseus' character aren't necessarily an improvement, but the way this changed character is conveyed often is. A good translation is also an adaptation. An example would be adapting idioms to ones in other languages that convey similar meaning. Or how the Kansai dialect in anime was often translated as a southern accent because it conveyed a similar vibe. There's a joke in Toy Story where Buzz is set to speaking Spanish. In the Mexican release, he speaks like he's from Spain. And in the Spain release, they use a thick Andalusian accent. This is a joke that could not work without adaptation. Even with the Odyssey, each of these translations differ quite a bit. But what about the change in format? The Odyssey was an oral tradition story, then a written work, and now a musical, and soon we'll be talking about animation. Each has advantages. An orally told story can rely on acting and the artist responding actively to their audience. Written works provide unmatched access into the thoughts of the character. Video games provide interactivity and immersion. A musical allows you to convey a character's thoughts, feelings, and actions through song. In this case, we don't have a visual component, so everything rests on the music itself. I recommend checking out basically any video from Sideways, but to give one specific example, you can correlate certain characters and themes with musical motifs which can then be reincorporated. You can't use sound in a book or a purely orally told story in the same way. Jorge is very good at these incorporations, using them to add to the Odyssey in subtle and overt ways.
I know life and fate are scary, but I wanna be legendary. Behind you!
The use of the legendary motif alone tells us that Telemachus is here. What happens when we add the visual element back in? Well, thanks to the many fantastic animators in the Epic community, we know. The power they have over the story is insane considering how much is out of their hands. These artists show, through creativity, skill, and imagination, just what can be done. I suspect they have more power than they think. Before we can proceed, I have to acknowledge one thing. Jorge sometimes specifies how he would want things presented visually. This can even go in the reverse, where an animator does something and Jorge decides it's now canon. While it's cool he interacts with the community this much, as somebody who really wants to see what individual artists can bring to the table and who prefers his authors dead, it makes me break out into hives. I can't find a comprehensive list of these canon presentations, so keep that in mind going forward and try to take my points in a general fashion if a specific visual isn't something the animator decided. These visual elements can establish narrative. In Thunderbringer, does Zeus confront them on the ship or on land? We can ask something similar of Get in the Water. What scenes does the prophet show Odysseus? Probably the most wild divergence of narrative happens in 600 Strike. Really, the only information the musical provides for how Odysseus defeats Poseidon is that after the fact, Poseidon says it was Odysseus opening the wind bag that defeated him. This is something caused by Epic, because if you listen to it on its own, it doesn't really clearly convey what is happening in this critical moment. It almost feels like it's relying on the animators. But the result is an impressive variety of battles, from divine intervention to jetpacks to duvet box. Duvet Box has Odysseus beat Poseidon through skilled sailing and intelligence, a fresh take on the classic tricking the bad guys into breaking pillars and collapsing the roof on them. Poseidon starts destroying islands. Odysseus notices and proves himself a mighty coxswain before using all the rubble as ammo. We're reinforcing previous traits, sailing and intelligence, then paying them off with a satisfying, intense, and extreme battle that is still somewhat realistic. The following Poseidon torture scene varies between artists as well. We can see Duvet Box providing quick, relevant flashback shots with each stab, while Willows prefers keeping it in the moment, and Kamalensi uses more extensive flashbacks to show what Odysseus is thinking about. This is all storytelling using Epic as a springboard as much as Epic used the Odyssey as one. This is writing. Artists always impact character design to some degree. From Psychopath Odysseus to Stoic to Fabulous to Anime Chibi. These all convey different things about the character. For instance, most people have him get mangy and punished by the Wisdom Saga, but some artists convey it differently or not at all. They decide how they want to visually present what the character has gone through. Polyphemus is a great example here. Everyone chooses how they want to draw a monstrous Cyclops, but it might be more challenging than it seems thanks to the source material. Wolfie the Witch draws an impressive childlike Cyclops, which works with these lines.
Hurt you. Captain, please! Wait! It was nobody. Nobody. If nobody hurts you, be silent. Don't go.
But Polyphemus also gives speeches like this.
Don't you know that pain you sow is pain you reap? Time to drink your blood over where you stand. Your life now is in my hand.
Which fits with Samina's interpretation as the classic bearded Cyclops. I'd say Merxie hits the middle ground thanks to the charity that being an eldritch monster provides. We can infer its thought processes can be a bit more esoteric, while certain childlike or animalistic motions add more credence to this character striking both sides. But now it's time for the meat of the discussion, characterization. We can all accept that different actors provide different things to their roles. They can convey new sides to a character or infuse lackluster dialogue with deeper meaning. Animators have the same power and then some. For example, these three versions of the song Dangerous present very different versions of Hermes and different attitudes Odysseus has towards him. Is Hermes a silly meme boy, or is there a hidden menace to him? Is Odysseus harrowed or ready for his next challenge? How about in Charybdis? Is he psychotically determined like in Virus AP's animatic, gloriously defiant like Roserix's, or somewhere in between like in Utsul's? Each says different things about Odysseus and would impact the theme of not just the song, but the entire story. In addition, Virus AP has some stellar direction, Rosric shows Odie figuring out Charybdis' weaknesses in the moment to reinforce his intelligence, and Utzel makes it a dramatic battle. Gigi and Samina tackle suffering very differently, the former having both characters play their interactions straight, while the latter shows tension and conflict between them. However, this comes at the cost of both the Siren and Odysseus not being as effective of manipulators. The artists were able to make choices about what was important to convey in the scene. The gods, many of whom appear only once, are a great chance for artists to flex their creativity. The song God Games can have very different versions of all involved. Neil illustrates it as Athena battling the Pantheon. Others draw as a debate. Some of these debates will have Ares as the only battle. And these Athenas can have different attitudes towards Ares. For example, does she help him back to his feet with grace, or does she hate his guts? Hera is a fun case study as well. Neil draws her as fun-loving and funky and leaves it at that. Meanwhile, Anaflamma draws her more flamboyant, yet with a bit of darkness and anger when Athena makes her argument. Anaflamma continues, giving her a very interesting reaction to Zeus's outburst, while Noir Hyacinth gives her a different sort of reaction and shows her protecting the other gods from Zeus's wrath. Make no mistake, these are 3 different characters, and it was the animators that made them this way. The climax of God Games also says a lot. Everyone seems to agree, and rightfully so, thanks to the piano version of Warrior of the Mind that plays, that Athena has a flashback of Odysseus before whatever she does to convince Zeus to free him. The most common interpretation seems to be Odysseus showing his newborn son to her, which I think is a great choice. But others go different routes, which are just as viable with the source material. Speaking of both Warrior of the Mind and converging interpretations, that song has something that became a meme. Through several creators doing the same thing, it eventually became reinforced in the community that at this moment Odysseus tries to high-five Athena and gets left hanging. Gigi pays this idea forward when Athena high-fives Telemachus later. In this song, you also have to decide how Odysseus defeats the magic boar, with certain methods showing his intelligence more than others, and some using it to build up his relationship with his friends to add some emotional impact to later scenes. This song and My Goodbye are the primary songs for early Athena development. Once again, the specifics of her character are a bit hard to nail. With future information and certain lines, it's clear she's fonder of Odysseus than she lets on. But she also treats him as a defective tool to some degree. If you drew her being 100% cold or 100% emotional, you probably wouldn't be representing the character accurately. Yet within that sliding scale, you're deciding a lot about who Athena is. I could go on for literally hours providing specific examples and talking about how much I love all these animatics and what they do differently. Or talking about all the interesting changes Epic makes to the Odyssey. Or we can move on to other adaptations and what they do right and wrong. But for this video, the point about the insane creativity of the animators and their writing decisions and adaptation has been made. If this video blows up, I'll probably do something more comprehensive since I'll take any excuse to spurg out about Epic. I think it'd be pretty fun to go over every song and the animatics for them. As a closer, let me say thank you to the community and the creators. Each of you has made this worth talking about, and I just want people to notice the depth of what you've done. Thank you, and have a great day.